Now, hello, you're very welcome to the Voices of the Centre, a panel discussion that we're hosting here on the Wednesday of Galway Pride, because this is definitely happening live. My name is Shar, my pronouns are they, them. I'm the PRO of Pride, and I'm honestly blown away by the amazing panel that we have for you today. So we have voices that might sometimes be considered at the margins of our community, but we wanted to put those voices front and centre, so hence Voices of the Centre. So I'm going to go and hand you over to each of our panelists one by one, just to do a quick introduction and a little intro all about them. So I'm going to go to Lilith there.
All right. Hey, how you doing? I'm Lilith. I am the National Community Development Officer with the Transgender Equality Network of Ireland. That's basically my job title, and I'm very happy to be here.
Oh, brilliant. And yeah, Owen, over to you.
My name's Oein DeBhairduin. I'm a traveller and I'm the chairperson of the LGBT Traveller and Roma Action Group.
Brilliant. And Pradeep?
Hi, I'm Pradeep. I'm from India and newly Irish citizen, he, him. And I'm visual artist and anti-sexual racism activist. Thank you.
Oh, fantastic. And then last but most certainly not least, Leo.
Hi everybody, my name is Leo Snygans, it's us Leo Snygans. I'm a newly status refugee here. My pronouns is he, him. And yeah, I've been in Ireland almost 3 years. Actively, I grew up as an anti-apartheid activist, currently still an LGBTQI activist and fighting for diversity in the background. But yeah, nice meeting everyone.
Oh, brilliant. No, thanks so much. So I guess just to kick things off, I'm going to go back to you, Leo, first. What ways do you stay engaged, or that you stay engaged with the LGBT plus community here in Ireland?
I'm going to be very honest, so I speak very honestly. I'm involved with a group called LGBTQI Rainbow Mute, which is all the refugees, that's asylum seekers or refugees. We normally meet once a month in Dublin, and activities especially. I moved out of direct provision in March, so I stayed most of the pandemic in the direct provision, and a lot of my fellow asylum seekers are still in direct provision. Sadly, I'm not going to go into details. I'm just going to quickly touch base about certain things. When you're LGBTQI, you're in direct provision. It's basically being in your same situation where you come from. There's not much integration in the centers, not much protection. So there's still a lot of things happening underground. Galway, I'm still new here. I've met most of the people just before the pandemic. Inclusion, I still feel like an outsider. It's Matlom era. I love Ireland. I'm learning the language too. But you're a blow-in. And I've met a lot of people, but I'm not really in touch with anybody in Galway. It's very hard to meet fellow gay people. A lot of the people here, and don't take this as a negative, you are all old friends and people that's been connected to each other for a very long time. And especially with the pandemic, that also stopped the connection of socializing. So it's been quite a lonely road for me, especially the last year and a half during the pandemic. So hopefully there will be changes and more diversity changes in the future. I also think with the committee and stuff, more inclusion of people from the outside. I look at the picture the other day of the community LGBTI Pride, and I was like, it's the same Irish people I've met, the same people in the group. So, and don't take it as a negative.
Oh, no.
I have to speak about this stuff, but I love Galway. I love the connection, and I see a lot of potential in Ireland. Ireland itself is still growing. Yeah. That's a mouthful. I have a lot to say, but yeah, I'll stop there for a second.
Yeah. I know, but that's all very important. And I can only imagine trying to move to a new place and trying to meet new people during the pandemic. Like, it's already a pretty difficult thing to do. And then when you're in and out of lockdowns and that isolation, like, it's definitely quite hard. But I'm going to make sure that feedback goes back to our Galway community, if nothing else. But yeah, Owen, over to you. What do you do to stay engaged with the LGBT community?
Well, not so unusually, my experience is quite like Leo's, although I've actually been born in Galway and raised in Galway and have worked a lot in the national framework. Most of my connection will be through my volunteer work and working with the groups, the sectors, and then the ACT group itself. But on a personal level, I think that the discrimination towards Mincary or travellers in Ireland is so pervasive, it's very difficult for people to maintain a relationship. Like, just to give like even the I suppose a regional kind of offset and the national offset. Like, we have life expectancy of 61, which means the median age of 38, which means 50% of our general population does not pass the age of 38. This also includes LGBT travellers. Within the Galway context, the report came out on the 7th of July this year. 50% of people long-term, I suppose, homelessness in Galway are travellers. We're less than 1% of the population. Phenomenal. 86% unemployment rate out of a population of almost 40,000. Only 167 people have progressed to third level, and this all compounds the fact that that's the general population, which becomes even more, I suppose, kind of people on the age when you actually have, I suppose, additional intersectionalities of being LGBT. But also our policies and inclusions, while people can have gestures and warmth and openness, the sustained connections are very, I suppose, rarely found, because when they meet people from our community, we very rarely come with singular issues because of the trauma we've experienced. So I think that I'm quite lucky to have sustained some relationships over the years, are very authentic, but it's very difficult. And certainly as an Mincary, I have experienced many people within the community feel not only are we on the edge, sometimes we're very much outside the room. There's opportunities for us to grow that, but I think similar to Leo, that we need to name it without shaming it in order for us to progress beyond it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And kind of including you for all sorts of things, not just being like, oh, we want a traveller for an event, come and talk.
Oh yeah. Let's talk all day long about like our trauma and our peers and our tears and no. But when it actually comes to other sections, kind of going, we don't seem to have the value of input or of opinion. I think that's actually incredibly problematic. And it can go all long days around, you know, with our policies, or like the national LGBTQI youth policy names us. The national national travel Roma inclusion strategy names us, but there's no resources or interconnectivity between them. So we get to the table in name, but very rarely get to eat and share the celebration with others.
Yeah, I know, 100%. But yeah, Lilith, over to you. What do you do to stay engaged? I know you work, your job is with the community, but what do you do on a personal level and a professional level to stay engaged with the community?
Yeah, I suppose, like, in one way, I do kind of feel like I've only really kind of launched myself into the community in the last 5 years, because I came out about 5 years ago. Maybe my yes, I know I work in the community, so that's a big factor of it. I do wonder as well if maybe it is a gender thing as well. When I first came out, women that I knew before I came out very much were proactive in including me within the feminist community, and you know, that helped me to really kind of meet people and you know, get embedded. And I suppose I would have done my little part behind the scenes around campaigning to repeal the 8 and knocking doors and being in feminist groups and that sort of a thing. And it definitely did kind of launch me into the community, not just in the LGBT community, but also with women as well. And I guess, you know, I was very proactive, and I found it really, really important, and the concept of community care, and how really it's so important that you give as much as you can, and you know, so to your community, that really helps kind of build those kind of relationships and bring people together, and it's something that I'm incredibly passionate about, and that's probably why I ended up in the job that I'm in. I mean, I applied intending to be to do admin, and then put me in this role. So that might be a part of it.
Oh no, well that's great. Pradeep, then over to you. What do you do to get engaged in your local LGBT community?
Okay. First of all, thank you so much for this invitation, and this is amazing panel. So I'm glad I'm here. So what I'm doing? Okay, so I'm a visual artist. I'm a writer. And I also work as a senior art director in big corporate. So what I'm doing for community, first of all, I'm glad to say and proud to say that I write for CCN, and I write about immigrant queer people's experiences in Ireland, and also understanding that intersectionality. I focus more on Asian people, and I'm studying and I'm researching and more writing in future about sexual racism and its mental health. Along that, I'm also part of ACT UP. I'm proud ACT UP associate. And I also associate with Dublin Pride Run for the last 4 years, and we raise around 70,000 euros so far in last 9 years to support
Wow.
LGBTQI charities in Ireland. Plus, I'm also working with Empower, and I'm designer and graphic artist and visual artist. So I'm working with Empower and HIV Ireland to create the discourse about sex party first aid guide for health and safety. And also recently I work on all creatives of syphilis campaign initiated by Empower. So I try to help, and I try to be connect with community. Yes, as a person of color, and that is also from Asian person of color, it is really hard to make friends and or go on the dates or go on the hookahs and have sex. So that's me. Thank you.
Oh no, that's great. And it's amazing to hear that kind of being able to bring that visual art kind of work into your activism and into your community work too. That's fantastic. As a baby artist myself, I love hearing about stuff like that. But I guess like I know like myself, and I know all of us, like we're probably asked all of the time to speak on these issues that we are on the margins of, and to highlight our margins. And as Oein said earlier, to basically shout out all your traumas and then leave again. So I'd like to maybe focus on a more positive thing on what are your role models? Like, who are the people that you really look up to? They can be in your life, they can be in the media. Anyone have a burning kind of answer for this that wants to jump in? I'll go to Oein.
I was waiting for Smith to jump in. I suppose when it comes to people I admire, there actually are many, and you admire people for very different reasons. But there's people who have pressed the boundaries of identity and inclusion in a very authentic ways within my life and in my sphere. People like Nan Joyce back in the 70s, 80s, who campaigned so strongly to even get us recognised. Senator Oein Flynn, around inclusion, especially around kind of like gender, body autonomy, and actually authentic voice, that's reflecting that we're actually an incredibly diverse group. People like Catherine Joyce, Thomas McCann. And I think that for different reasons, I think people can be light carriers and wave showers for us all and change makers. But I don't have, I'm quite lucky in one way that I don't seem to have one or two people I find the point of inspiration. There's so many, you know, and I think, and that's what it is, that it shows that there's like change is cultivated, not just made. You know, that it is a journey into itself, not just a distinct action. And so those people and so many more, even on a personal realm, like people like even the people in my own kind of family line who are coming out in the 70s as LGBT, but not as trappers, because those spaces weren't always safe or inclusive. And being able to acknowledge them and name them and identify them is quite powerful. And even things around like the Polari language, which was quite pervasive within the Anglosphere in England. There's words within that language that comes from our language of Gammon, which shows that we've been in presence quite some time, but we've very rarely been acknowledged. So like I would say there's many more I've yet to meet and to be inspired by, but to pick one, I think I would do the others injustice.
Well, that's totally fine. And I think one of the best things is if you get a whole list of names that for anyone watching, you can look up those people. There'll be even more amazing people to learn about and kind of widen your own kind of scope of the people you know. But yeah, Leo, what about yourself? Any kind of role models that inspire you?
Growing up in a country that was quite oppressed, I want to go, my favorite person till this day is Nelson Mandela. So always an inspiration. Ireland, there's a couple. I had the privilege to meet Sister Stan Kennedy not long ago, the starter of the Refugee Council, and I mean the homeless shelter in Dublin and starting the whole, I mean, unbelievable. I had the privilege to spend some time at there. She has like a sanctuary in Dublin where they basically run, and it's amazing. So it's basically it. But yeah, there's a lot of inspirational people. If I think about my life, I grew up quite alone, so I didn't have like the family figures as the mom or the dad. So it was more political orientated than anything else. But LGBTQI, and they're probably going to sound like vain, but I look in the mirror, I'm proud of myself, what I stand for. So yeah, that's my
that's really important too. Like you gotta be happy with what you're seeing. But yeah, Pradeep, what about yourself?
So I have different a set of people that I feel inspired. So if you see, there are some people in India, or some people in London where I lived, and then in Dublin, Ireland. Specifically talking about Ireland, it was amazing to meet so many beautifully inspiring people, including Tony Walsh. She's my good friend, and I just feel happy. Then Michael Nancy Hyron, who was a founder of Belong To, his husband, partner Jamie. These are all inspiring people. And then Thomas Strong, Noah Helpin. These people with whom I spend my Christmas, and we talk all about queer things and gay things and sex and everything. Acting. So I think I'm glad. I think I'm the chosen one, or I'm just blessed, because as a person of color, immigrant person of color, it is hard to pick up or look up to any role model, because nothing related to them or their culture or where they are coming from, or going into the circle. You know, we have a lot of small circles, and it is really hard to go there and you meet one person and that person just introduces you everyone. So I met one person whose name is Stevie, who is also my inspiration, and he was the co-founder of this amazingly beautiful rave party in Dublin called Grace. So Steve introduced me to Thomas Strong, Noah, Tony Walsh, Will, and now at ACT UP everyone is inspiring. Everyone is super knowledgeable, angry, activist, and just so there are a lot of inspiring people. And,
Yeah, I know, and it's such an Irish thing of like you find one person and they'll be like, okay,
yeah.
I'll show you like the map on how to navigate these
It is
spaces.
like atomic energy, you know, to just
Yeah.
and but meeting that one person, it took me. So I'm in Ireland for 9 years. Okay, so it took me 7 years to get my recognition as a person of color. He's also gay, and he could be our friend. We can relate to him, and we can proudly take our selfie and put on our Instagram.
Yeah.
You know, so people meet, people chat, but there is some barrier where when you're a person of color, you become something like alien, outsider.
Yeah. No, that's like, so we really need to do a lot more work there. But Lilith, I'll go over to you about, give us some of your role models.
Oh God, I suppose like on a personal level, you know, I have my found family, and they're definitely kind of people that I really appreciate having in my life, and I look up to, you know. And I also spent Christmas with some of them as well, on a kind of, I don't know, celebrity tran or whatever. I don't know. I suppose I really take a lot of inspiration, I guess, from Sandy Stone. Who is she was very much involved in kind of combating a lot of the kind of the early turfs that were knocking about in the 70s, and you know, was this studio recorder person that, you know, worked who lived with lesbians and recorded music, and was just kind of doing her thing and living her life, and really being a trailblazer, and I guess as a working class person, you know, it would be somebody that I don't know, I just relate to.
Oh no, that's cool. But yeah, just like, I think basically everybody has kind of touched on it in some way, but like, especially with what you were saying, Pradeep, I feel like there is a misconception that like within the LGBT plus community that there's no such thing as racism, there's no such thing as transphobia, and there's no sexism, no isms whatsoever. We all just love everybody. How would you kind of respond to kind of people who might think the LGBT community kind of has all of that figured out? And I might go to you first, Pradeep.
Yeah, it is broad question. I can talk about it all night. Okay, and I will just hit it in brief. Yeah, I agree. There are so much like makeup, or I can say lipstick inclusion and diversity happens. Like Pride is just for a month, and then it's all glitters and floats, but not actually recognizing real issues that bother day-to-day life. Like big prominent issue is mental health, and mental health affect everyone. Even when you are queer, it just affects your whole life structure. It is not about a person of color or a white person, but we don't talk about it. It is something shame also said. Again, it comes to sexual health. We talk about bringing your authentic self, but do we have really space, or do we have developed that sense of bringing authentic self? Or if somebody bringing authentic self, do we have developed that openness that we can actually understand that for being authentic self? So it is quite difficult question to answer. yeah, there are a lot of positive things happening, but they are really slow. But what I need to underline here that in the queer culture, we need to talk about a lot of real issues than just inclusion and diversity for their like alphabets. These are really beautiful world, but if you see, diversity and inclusion is expensive from physical point of view, from mental point of view, from economical point of view. Lot of training need to be done, a lot of infrastructure need to be updated and created from government level, workplace, immigrant issues, healthcare issues. So this is how to done. And prides in Ireland, I can see I'm here for 9 years. So last 2 years, I'm seeing it happening that prides are moving away. It's like a caterpillar. It is moving away from floats and glitter and rainbow. And it's nice to see like people are understanding, including progressive flag, talking about bisexuality, talking about intersex. And so, yeah, we are slowly moving.
Yeah, no, things have been changing a lot the last couple of years, and I'm glad to see it, that Pride isn't just for white, settled, middle-class Irish people who happen to be gay. Like, it's for a hell of a lot more. But Owen, I might go to you next. How would you respond to anyone who might think that racism or transphobia doesn't exist in our community?
Well, very similar to Pradeep, I'm absolutely astonished of how some people, and I understand where it comes from, but I just can't make that journey to meet them on an emotional level of how people don't associate Pride with being a protest. I'm from a community where, in general, like 1 in 11 people pass by suicide. That's our general population. Never mind people who are into, and kind of mental health struggles alone. Like, even a couple of like last month during kind of a month before during Pride, there was genuinely a very strong upset when it was Waterford Wexford when someone burnt a flag. And that was very authentic. And that response was real, it was visceral, and it was like powerful. And people were going, Trevor Home's getting burnt all the time. Look at August, or Trevor Home that's been assigned was burnt down. And we didn't really get their response to going, like those families, those Trevor families include LGBT people. So it's almost like we're put into these really weird intersectionalities of like almost like a privileged identity, but almost like if it comes to a difficult, like so certain parts of identities are a little bit in vogue now, and almost it's like everybody likes to celebrate the rainbow, likes to celebrate like the LGBTQ, and there's been a long journey since '93 with decriminalisation of homosexuality. I'm a traveller. I'm known as a traveller. I'm a Mincarry. Nomadism is illegal in this country. People will call me a traveller. I'm not allowed to move. And yet we will shout from the rivertops going, how amazingly powerful and symbolic it was to strip away the idea that your identity could criminalise in '93. And we're kind of going, excuse me? Like, if I take to the road tomorrow morning and enact traditional rights and go to traditional spaces, like my home can be taken off me. My family will be penalised. There's incredibly thousands upon thousands of euros worth of kind of fines associated. And these fines are being applied. These are affecting directly LGBT people. And because we sometimes say travel, we somehow have this idea of this normative heterosexual traveller, and in fact kind of going, we're incredibly diverse, and like these policies are literally killing us. So when it comes to Pride and when it comes to those spaces, I don't understand how we don't see, and like things like direct vision, which I think is such a kind word for such a cruel, destructive, horrendous structure, that was based and many times on the policies of how people treat travellers, because that created the legal fundamental baseline of going, this is what you can get away with around accommodation, this is what you get away around with healthcare, this is what you can get away with, because we've been around, like in the 60s, we had a policy that was not removed until 2017 that called for like the annihilation of traveller people. So when people talk about Pride in these spaces, they're powerful, they're needed, we need these structures, and we need to celebrate, we need to take off these shackles. But my God, how is this not a serious protest? To this day? And so I think, though, that disconnection, I understand where it comes from, it just confuses me. It absolutely confuses me.
Yeah, oh no, 100%. It's like, you almost are like, you nearly laugh in someone's face when they say that, because you're just like, how are you so disconnected? Like, what? But yeah, no, Lilith, I might just go to you to talk about transphobia. You know, that really fun thing we love to talk about so much. And the unfortunate, like, creeping up of more transphobia in our community, sadly.
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, and now my connection started to get a little bit wobbly, so hopefully you can hear me okay. But yeah, I think that since marriage equality, there's just been a general malaise in the trans in the LGBT community when it comes to our rights collectively. And I think one of the groups that has suffered the most is my community, the trans community. Like, last year, healthcare for or this year, like, healthcare for trans adolescents has collapsed. It's gone. There's none. You know, they had a contract with the Tavistock, which was ended, and nothing was done to replace that. And we now have no healthcare for trans adolescents in this country. You know, that should be an absolute national scandal. It's inexcusable, and you know, I get so frustrated and upset and angry that our young trans people, you know, do not have access to healthcare. It's just I'm trying not to swear, but I can't express the anger and frustration and upset, you know, about that. It just should never have happened, and you know, it needs to be sorted yesterday, you know, but it's still continuing on in the situation that it's in, you know. We have a situation where there's increasing pathologization of trans people. It's getting worse. You know, when I initially came out about 5 years ago, the waiting list to go to Loughlinstown was counted in the weeks. And now we're looking at 2.5. They're seeing patients from 2.5 years ago. And that's what they're saying on their website, which is a very, you know, I think, sly way of saying it. Because this year, 420 trans people will join a waiting list for a service that will see 150 people a year. And when they get into that service, they are asked some of the most disgusting questions about their personal lives. The most disgusting questions. They're still asking trans people, you know, about their wanking. You know, I was asked when I went into an assessment, you know, what goes through my mind when I receive oral sex. And that's what trans people are having to put up with in order to get a prescription for HRT that any cis person can get through their GP. And when the clinicians go onto the newspapers and they talk about us, they're saying that, you know, it's a specialized service, and you know, there's trans people and they're complicated by functional impairment. That's what they call trans people that might be autistic or have autism or might have a bit of trauma in their lives, you know. And you know, I am sick of the silence. I am absolutely sick of it at this stage. It's just getting worse and worse and worse, and we have to give trans people hope. But you know, in the 5 years that I've been around, you know, since gender recognition, you know, I am struggling to see, you know, the successes and the progress of my community. It's just getting worse. And I've talked to people, and I feel that trans people's standards for the sort of treatment that they should be getting is lowering. You know, like people are saying, oh, it wasn't that bad. Oh yeah, he asked me about wanking, and your man blushed. You know, that's what the sort of things that people are saying. You know, they're having assessments where they're bringing family members in, where they're telling people that they won't get assessed unless they bring a family member with them. We're adults. Yeah. You know, whereas if you're of sound mind, you need to have, we should have bodily autonomy. We should be able to make decisions about our own bodies without being pathologized and without, you know, a panel of clinicians deciding what we are allowed to do with our own bodies. Now when a GP fills a form to be referred to the National Gender Service, you have to say you have to tell them your education. You have to tell them your living arrangements. It's none of their bloody business. And I'm sorry I'm getting so angry, but it gets to that point where it just can't continue on the way it is. I'm of the belief now the National Gender Service have cut off any professional interaction with TENI. If you look at their new shiny website that they've just put up, they say that their committee, their committee is basically made up of the very clinicians that are treating their patients. Their model of care doesn't conform to any international standards of care, best practice standards of care, and it just is so divorced from what the trans community want. We want informed consent healthcare in the community now, with no waiting lists. A trans person should be able to go to their GP and say, "I'm trans," and that the GP can give them the information about about HRT if that's what they want to do. Refer them on to counselling if they want counselling. If they do have co-occurring issues, go to your local HSC psychiatrist rather than being shoved off into Loughlinstown and being waited 3 years with nothing. I mean, the first thing they say on their website is, while you wait, is essentially get a hobby. Pursue your passions.
Yeah.
What a slap in the face for the trans community.
It's just awful. And such a slap in the face in the fact that our Gender Recognition Act has the right to self-determination, but our healthcare doesn't.
Yeah, and that's what we need the trans community to stand with us and to demand, and to be aware of these things and to understand these things. And if you're a cis person in the LGBT community, you need to know these things. You need to listen to trans people and you need to do your research. And, journalists need to, step up their game. Journalists are saying, going on to Twitter and saying, "I'm afraid to write about trans politics." What are you talking about?
Yeah. I know. Yeah, there's a lot of circusry around some of that stuff where they're just making up political footballs out of people's lives, unfortunately. But no, I would wholeheartedly agree with basically everything you said. Leo, just over to yourself. Just if you have any kind of
I'm firstly going to say, Lilith, I'm starting my journalism this year, so 4 years' time, don't worry, I'm going to shake the cage. There's a lot of shaking needed. I'm going to touch base on everybody. My experience as somebody in Ireland. When I came in the direct provision system and meeting every month with people who are still in the system from our community, no mental health support. I went through a year and a half of bullying in the place where you deal with people, and it's not their fault. You deal with people that come from countries that's already oppressive, being LGBTQI, and you're in a situation you have no protection, and you share rooms with people, and you're basically by yourself. And then also going through the interview system, the questions that's been asked. I mean, I'm not even going to go into the proof of your sexuality and all the kinds of strange questions and stuff you have to go through. Traveller community, I did the access course. I met a gentleman from the traveller community, and we became quite close. We spent some time together. Very, very strict culture, but I've been just going out a couple of times. The way he was treated with me, that was also, I was mind-boggling. I can just go on for such a long time talking about different things. Being called a faggot, I've been called 3 times in the last 3 weeks in Galway. And I mean, you just walk on. I'm a colourful person. I said to somebody the other day, I cannot keep my light hidden away. If I scratch your demons, that's your problem. I've been in the shadows too long. I came to Ireland to be free. And no negative. Countries are changing. There is quite a scapegoat, I think, going on the moment in the world, that people are being attacked, especially from the LGBTQI community. My friend Saoirse Mackin, who got attacked 2 weeks ago in Cork from the trans community. I mean, I looked at the comments that was written there. She wants to be a boy, all the ugly things that's been said. I mean, wow. Racism, transphobia, homophobia, very much alive. Very, very much alive all around us. And it's so sad to see, because, I'm one of those deep, sensitive people, and I just think Ireland has so much potential, and I see change. I see the political system is changing. The two old parties was in the bed. They got shaken up a bit. There is hope. I see a very positive picture, and I just hope. I'm a middle age, or we're going to say I'm in my 40s, but the young generation, especially, standing up, getting more involved in the voting and changing of policies. And I mean, I had a friend too in the hospital of the subject. She has bulimia. And I went through the last 6 months just for her. And she's also part of the LGBTQ community, just getting into treatment into Dublin. There's no provision made for any of this. I'm just quite flabbergasted, because it's a European country. And you would think that we're a bit ahead here. But anyway. Yeah. It's a touchy subject. Also, where I moved out of direct provision in March. I moved into a house. I share a house with people. I mean, in the first week, I was told by my landlord, "Don't act too gay. There's religious people staying in the house." So I ask, how can I hide all of this? It's very, very hard to hide this. So you permanently almost put in little block situations. I don't know. It's like and I can speak openly. It's like I said, the Catholic guilt thing. I don't know what it is, what's going on. But yeah, I'm learning a lot here. But yeah, definitely a lot of oppression, definitely a lot of negative. And my heart to everybody's story, and especially Lilith, just listening to you. Wow, nobody should be going through that. It's unbelievable. And also like direct provision systems. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Just 20 years later, the system is still there. I stayed in Silva's room. That was my little room. And Silva, I mean, it's gone quite quiet. I hope there will be a banner coming out this year for Silva still. And I mean, where she's still lying to rest on this day and age. It's a very touchy subject. So yeah, I stayed in her room for about 1.5 years where she used to stay. So it was very close to my heart and my mind. She also came from my country of birth. So yeah, anyway, I'll stop there. Otherwise I'll talk the whole night. And I'm a positive person. I'm not a negative person, but we have to speak about the uncomfortable truths. I mean, I'm going to say last thing. I'm quite a spiritual person. I believe in God too. And I actually joined a church. So I wanted to be baptized. So I saw the pastor 3 days ago after I made an appointment for 3 months to see the pastor. So he's been dodging me for 1.5 years about the baptism. That was my dream, to get baptized. So, and I was indirectly told that there is a church for people like me. And in the church itself, he will never basically marry same-sex couples. But at least he had the balls to tell me the truth. He spent for 45 minutes during our lunch date. We were sitting together. So in the end, I just said to him, "Pastor, can you just tell me, am I welcome really in your church?" I know it's like off the subject. But yeah, sadly, we have to fight for our places in different places. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh no, but like we could have had the whole panel about the last question, just about highlighting those almost like lateral kind of oppressions that are kind of coming from within our own community. And even just I know one of our committee members, Leon, had a piece in the paper last week just about how that targeted harassment seems to specifically be on the rise for all minorities, and it seems to almost be in turn with the fact that we are more isolated now, and we don't we travel alone a lot more or in smaller groups. So people who are already that more marginalized and vulnerable have that additional vulnerability now. Because I'm like, even just for myself, like I hadn't been called a slur in years until the last couple of weeks, and it was just like, oh my God, what is happening?
Like me, I just want to say something. Like even the other day, I have my rainbow shirt, so I actually got scared to wear my rainbow colors. I got to that stage. So the other day I went to buy myself a shirt with a little rainbow heart, and I was like, screw this. I'm putting on my rainbow shirt if I want to. I should not be scared when I'm walking on the streets. But you have to watch over your shoulder these days, because especially like I go for night walks and people have a bit of drinks and stuff, and you have that fear. If you say something back, it's going to change into something more.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, I don't know. It's difficult times for everybody, and sometimes it can almost feel like there's so much for us to keep on top of and allies to keep on top of. But I might just throw a final question your way around the room to be like, what can organizations like Galway Pride, or even allies that are watching this, what actions can we take to make sure that we are doing more than that performative allyship, that we are being open and welcoming and not just ticking a box? I might start with you, Leo, and we'll go the opposite way around again.
We're going to have a mouthful here. So I'm going to start firstly with inclusion. I think with the LGBT community in Galway, with the elections, I hope you have an open election this year to open it up for more people to be included on the board and to be a part of the community a bit more. And nothing negative. I mean, you guys have been doing a wonderful job, but we need diversity. It's the strength of the community. And and then also I think direct provision, it's gone quite quiet. About before the pandemic, the fight started to get really strong. That's quieted down to stand up again against direct provision, and especially for trans LGBTQI people in direct provisions. More involvement. Even the other day at the opening, there was nobody of the direct provision there. There was minimum representation. So I think it's also, we hide behind the cover too, but it's not an excuse to be involved and bring people in and more involved. And I just think more inclusion, diversity is our strength. And anyway, I can talk for hours and I don't want to do that. But
No,
I want to be more
okay.
involved. I'm trying really, really hard to be involved in the community. I didn't say earlier, I just jumped in immediately and I said how I felt. But I do a radio show too, Love Without Judgment, where I do on the Flirt FM, mental health. I think that's a big thing. And just inclusion of everybody. That's it.
Oh no, 100%. Well, I said I'll make sure that you get a personal email when we're having our AGM. But like, it is one of those things that everything is online right now, so it's never been more easy for no matter where you're living or where you're based if you want to pop along. So we probably all just need to get a little bit better at advertising and outreach and all that. Pradeep, what about yourself? Have you any kind of words of wisdom for recommendations that allies and event organizers like ourselves can do?
Yeah, I was waiting for this question and I'm listening to everyone, and it's so inspiring, and we should have this often. So I'm part of Dublin Pride run for last 4 years, and it's a quite large base. So just my personal experience, I could be biased. The first thing we need to understand that Irish landscape, like queer landscape, is changing so fast. We have this image of Ireland, that's the country that has won marriage equality. So people from, like me, from India or Pakistan or from Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. So we look at Ireland as the land of hope. Okay, so land of dream could be the United States, or land of opportunity for Asian people is like UK or Australia. But land of hope is like Ireland, where we are promoting that we recognize same-sex marriage, right? But the problem is that when people come here, they see this inequality. I come from the different journey, and I'm 40 plus, so I expose a lot of things and I consume a lot of things, and I got that time and opportunity to be spontaneous. And but people who come from smaller cities and towns to to study here or work here, for them, for those LGBTQ people, their first destination is Ireland, which they have learned through media that Ireland is inclusive. But as soon as they come here, they just drop into this whole slumber of dead isolation. And I'm not talking about isolation of pandemic, but this is a more hard-hitting isolation. No friendships, no interactions. People just look at it. If you're Asian, you are not attractive. Nobody wants to be with a friend or date or anything, you know. So all these organizations need to understand how we can give the space of this to this marginalized people. Each panel should have, each committee should have like designated permanent seats for trans people, for lesbian, for gay people of color. Or it's not only about cis, like white cis men. All these, if you see all the community, they are dominated. Now it is changing, but if you see in the past, it is dominated by white cis men, and they have their own perception of what is acceptable and what is not, and that is really not helpful for anyone on the board. And also, like, each committee in Ireland should have mandatory training of inclusion and diversity and implicit bias. Nobody is born racist. Nobody is born xenophobic. People learn, and people can be unlearned. But there are no tools. And this committee is not only, oh, yes, I'm chair of this blah, blah, blah pride, and I'm on the committee. But all these people need to be aware, like, we are on the committee, so we have this responsibility. It is our duty. We got the spotlight, the chance to enhance the day-to-day life of the marginalized people. And that's only will come with when we have the people who have this knowledge of this sexual and sexuality and gender structure, and how it work in day-to-day life, how people feel marginalized 24 hours, 7 a week, and 365 days. So all this, and this is my experience. I'm part of Dublin Pride Run, and I exposed to during the pandemic. This is my fourth year, and I don't want to work with any organization again, because people just look at you, somebody from outside. It is not, and all, again, I'm saying that all our efforts are just lipstick, like lipsticks or makeup. Deep down, people don't care to help the community. It has come all about social media bubbles and the glamour around it. So I would like to give this example. I'm associated with this beautiful Pride Run and this running club, LGBT running club. I don't want to take name, but it is hard. I don't have any friends there. I'm working well. I'm doing the all social media. I'm doing that all. If you see everything, like, and all this glamorous T-shirt, I can't call any one single person is my friend, and I call them in my trouble time, or I can call them for go for coffee or Zoom chat in the lockdown. And they are having their own, and it is just overwhelming for me. And I can see if I'm going there for running, or one person of color with 80 other white people, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
It is really pressurizing to hold you up. People judge you, what you wear, how you run, how you look, where you work, where you live in Dublin. So it is so frustrating for people of color. And I can understand this must be really horrible. This sin must be really horrible for trans people. But this is really, really heartbreaking to see. I was at this rave party, Grace, a couple of times, and I see this bunch of people from this Pride run and running club. They just don't talk with me, and they were dancing just next to me, and nobody looking at me, and they have their own group. So this is what we are talking about: inclusion and diversity. These words sound so amazing. But before having it in our life, we need to understand that what is inclusion and diversity. We need to ask this fundamental, difficult question. First of all, what is inclusion and diversity mean? We are talking about having it. But what is implicit bias means? Every person born with biases. It is scientific thing. Every person born with biases, but some people's biases affect other people.
Yeah.
And that need to be understand. And inclusion and diversity start from yourself, how you conduct yourself, how you look outside, how you recognize different people. So I think this need to be done. People need to be aware what are the committee, what are their agendas, why people coming on a committee, what are their personal agenda, what they want to contribute. It is not only about glamour and social media stories. It is beyond. It is most responsible. And I have seen all the committees, they hold so much money, so much power, they can change, they can make fundamental change. But I don't see it's happening.
Yeah, I think that's so important, just that we're aware of how we're behaving, and that it does kind of start with your own kind of circle and looking at who you're working with and who you're going around. So that was so heartfelt. So thank you really for your honesty and candidity as well.
Another small thing I would like to say, we are not talking about mental health of immigrant people. And I have been to many therapists. Our curriculum for making therapists doesn't include queer immigrants issues. So most therapies is not helpful. It's not. It's a truth. I'm telling you, it's not helpful. Most of the time, I have to update my therapist, like what is immigrant LGBTQ issues. What is sexual racism? What is isolation? What degree of isolation we face? So it is quite heartbreaking. Just like Lilith said, it is heartbreaking. I will cry just now if I keep talking. But it's so like government bring us to study here. We are economic migrant. I'm talking about economic migrant. It is a different category from asylum seeker than refugee. Government bring us here to make wealth. We get this work permit or studying permit, but that's it. After that, we have to pay tax for everything. Yeah. We don't get healthcare. You can ask about like immigrant queer people's healthcare. There is no healthcare for us. Glad we have GMHS, and that's why I run the campaign with ACT UP Open GMHS now, because during the lockdown, people were meeting, having sex, and for like immigrant people who feel isolated, sex is a good tool for them to feel happy. Mental health, but there wasn't testing. If you get syphilis, gonorrhea, everything, you have to spend minimum €350, and you don't get anything from government. So people don't test. So all these issues need to be discussed there to be done. So all the committees has this amazing opportunity now to include more people from diverse background and think not only about the fun, but all these fundamental issues.
No, 100%. Like basically +1 to all of that. Owen, I might go to you about things that organizations or just allies that are watching could do to kind of meaningfully like support and be a proper good ally.
Yeah. Well, first thing, actually, my head is running with ideas, as you never expect. But I just wanted to mark something that Leo said as well. As someone from a spiritual background, I'm from obviously the tribe community. We seem to be very pressured around Roman Catholic beliefs. But at the same time, we have things like spirits and healers and kind of rituals. And during marriage equality and our move towards increased autonomy, especially for people kind of around the childbirth, kind of and pregnancy issues, I sat on the parish of the travelling people, which is a unique parish for travellers. So they are unusual spaces that actually can exist where our identities can very unusually coincide with parts of the wider traditions that we support without actually officially supporting the overall institution. So I think that keep looking, because there are spaces out there that can be actually supportive to us. When I'm thinking around things we can do as communities and allies, like for myself, it comes down to politicization and policies. Like my life is ruled by them. Everything I do is it's cornered by it. Like things like groups like the LTAC, which is the Local Traveller Accommodation Association Committee. Like we have people in our areas that sit as chairs who campaign against traveller accommodation. This is really dangerous, which means the government supports structures which provide basic accommodation and things like water and electricity, and people can create optional. And if it's options for us, trust me, it's optional for everybody, because that's the legal minimum. Think around legislation like hate crime legislation, hate speech, even the 1998 Discriminationary Act, very, very weak. I've seen cases thrown out regarding travellers, and that's just travellers, where judges have decided, there might be cases here for discrimination, but you don't look like a traveller, which means we won't support you. We won't actually protect you because you don't fit our idea of what a traveller is. So they can do that to travellers, they can do that to absolutely everybody else. Because what it is someone on the chair can decide, you know what, you're not traveller enough, you're not gay enough, you're not a person of colour enough, so I'm not going to actually protect you. And I think those things are incredibly dangerous. Also, cultural training. At the moment, like cultural competency training, even within our kind of official structures, from county councils, the HSC and departments, all optional. That needs to change. Like the civil service are there to support civil society, and all people within it. To have the idea that some people are optional is absolutely, excuse my language, and please blurt it out, fucking dangerous. The idea that anyone is optional, because once people become optional, people are excluded. And then let's not have any like people will and will continue to be included. But also, I think the marriage equality, while it was profound and powerful moment, is a very slippery slope. It's something our backs are all flip clapping, and we made it. We allow people to get married. Oh my God, this is the threshold we passed. At the same time, like how the state's actually treating people under provision, like absolute huge denial. But also, I think as well that mental health provisions are incredibly lacking, sexual health provisions are lacking, and our actual spaces to connect. Everything is city centric. Like I'm from rural Galway, so I'm living in exile in South Dublin, around a huge city, wonderful, right? My family and loved ones are in the middle of nowhere without, you'd be lucky, like in a traditional site, to even have a bus route. Right? So people are incredibly isolated. So I think we need to make sure that when we're talking about inclusion and certification and pathways, that we don't just think city and hope. We actually think kind of going, how do people, especially people who may have language, literacy, education, different, how actually are we including them? And are we actually challenging ourselves and actually making ourselves, like, are we actually putting ourselves on the trial going, how big is my table? Who's missing from it? And there can be very legitimate reasons why people are not there, but what are we doing to include it? And are we including them on a Tuscanistic? Because the amount of stuff I swear to God, everybody, things I've turned up at, you're kind of going, I might as well just get large, might have like a large trav on me because I'm only there because of the identity includes, nothing else. And that is not only is problematic for what we're doing and trying to move towards, it's problematic for our entire society because we become selective of who we want to hear about certain topics. So I think that not only should we put pressure on the wider community, we need to be allies to ourselves in a way that we can feel comfortably college ourselves out. Without actually incurring fresh trauma and bullying and isolation like going on. We can always do better. But I do think the increased politicization and policy awareness is essential because what we're all talking about is institutional discrimination, isolation, and pervasive racism that exists within our community around kind of like all sorts of identity. And until we actually start challenging it that way, we'll always be on the back of it.
Yeah.
Oh, can do it. I'm hopeful.
Yeah. I know there's definitely daring to hope is definitely one I kind of feel a lot, because there is a want for huge change, and I think that being an ally to ourselves and being mindful of ourselves and being kind of self-aware of what we might be being used for or tokenized for is so important. Just then, Lilith, just to continue around our circle. Not to brag or anything, but I think Galway Pride is a majority of trans committee, so I think we're doing pretty well on the trans representation side of things. On our committee, like obviously we've lots of work to do on lots of other things, but for anyone out there who might be involved with an organisation or wants to be a better ally to trans people, what kind of tips and resources would you recommend?
I think it's just like if you don't know where to start, I think just look around you, and you know where you go and where you work, the community organizations that you're involved with, if it's the GA or if it's your reading group or if it's your your football team or whatever, and just take a second to think, would a trans person feel welcome here? And if they don't, fix that. That will, you can do so much within your own small circles that, and, sometimes it means being the unpopular person. Sometimes it means not letting that person get away with that transphobic comment and, throwaway comment, I would also say like that, Owen kind of brushed upon it there as well. Some of the best allies that I've witnessed and that I've had the pleasure of having in my life have been people from the traveller community, because they understand, they know what it means to be marginalised, and they may not necessarily know what it means to be trans or the ins and outs of it, but they know that, and I think just having that bit of kind of understanding of other people's struggles, and you may not necessarily understand the specifics, but you can align with that feeling, and like the immigrant community, the traveller community, the trans community, people of colour within our community, the rural community, we're when we're apart we're small, but when we're together, that makes a fist.
Yeah.
And if we want to be able to make the change that we want to see in the world, if we want to be pushing for traveller rights, trans people need to be pushing for traveller rights. Trans people need to be pushing for against racism and abolishing direct provision. We have to be doing that too. And sometimes you can be on the ground, definitely there's a lot of hurt around things like marriage equality and repealing the 8 and being thrown under the bus, and having to, and the aftermath of that. But it's by, working together on our common, marginalization and really forging links between us, that's when we can become a mighty force. I mean, there's probably I'm using kind of the traveller community as an example, but there's probably about the same amount of traveller people in the country as there are trans people, So if we're working together, that doubles our impact. I'm not sure of the numbers of people in direct provision, but in comparison to the whole country, it's small. But if we're together, that's 100,000 people then, 120,000 people, shall we say? And the same with if the LGBT community is 10% of the overall population, then people of color and Black people within the LGBT community is about the same. So that's another 200,000 people, let's say. I don't know, but together we make a fist, and we can really make change, and for all of us, as long as we understand each other.
Yeah, no, I think it's so important to have that shared solidarity. One way my granny used to say it, it's like you want to work with someone who knows struggle. And like people who know struggle will understand other people who know struggle. And that was her way of like accepting anyone. She's like, well, they know struggle and I know struggle, so we can work together. But I'm going to do a quick fire closing comments, and maybe any kind of like, if you've got a project you're working on, or you want to shout out your social media, if anyone would like to look you up and follow you, or now is the time to do that, because we have technically gone over our hour, but honestly, I could have kept talking with all of you for hours and hours. Honestly, like this has been an absolute pleasure to host, and I'm only sorry that we couldn't have had a whole week of conversations together. But no, Pradeep, I'll go over to you then. So for your quick closing remarks and where we can find you online afterwards.
Okay. My quick closing remark is, in one line, Pride is a protest. It's not a party. It's a protest, and most people in the community, they don't show, but for them protest is 365 days, 24 hours. So we need to understand that beyond rainbow flags and glitter. And if you want to connect me, you can search my name on GCN. You will see what I have written. You can see my work on my Instagram, queer mates. I do illustrations about sexual racism. And all the best, Galway Pride. You are doing really amazing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Leo, over to you.
Well, I'm not much of a following yet, but I have my show on Flirt FM. So that's normally on a Friday at 4:00. If somebody wants to listen to some good meditation online and some mental health and positive advice. And then, like I said, I'm starting my journalism. So hopefully in the next few years, I'm going to shake the cage a bit in Ireland. And all I want to say is thank you for the opportunity of being a part of this panel. Lovely meeting all of you. In my country of birth, we say Aman Bla, standing together, staying strong. So, yeah, wish everybody well wishes. And I'm in Galway. Hope I'm going to enjoy the Pride in the next week coming up. Yeah. I'm very, very excited. And Pradeep, you're welcome to reach up. You're not alone. I always tell people we are not alone. We just have to make contact with each other. And Oein, everybody, it is such a privilege to be on this panel with you and to listen to everybody. I know there has been a lot of it sounds probably like negative, but it's not negative. It's constructive things. It's stuff.
Exactly.
Talk about. It's like I said the other day to the pastor, when I said we have to speak about uncomfortable truths to make the world a better place. And we've reached a place where people cannot share ideas. When you say something, somebody attacks you immediately. We can be completely different from each other, but we can sit at the same table and we can discuss and talk about stuff. And that's it. So well wishes to everybody. Go Ramahaget, Brodsona Jud, you say in Irish. I'm trying to learn the language now. I did my first diploma, so hopefully I'll speak Irish in the next few years. So thank you.
No, thanks so much, Leo. And it's been lovely to have you. And looking forward to working with you on more Pride things, I'm sure. Oein, over to you.
I'd just like to reaffirm what people said. I mean, kind of there's strength in unity. Pride is most certainly a protest, and if it isn't, I'm at the wrong one. And I suppose as a Gammon speaker, which is a variation of Irish, I would say kind of Liastwart, which means the queer people rising. But also, like, one of the things I'd always ask, especially around the world post-COVID, is that we need to be very aware of diversity in our spaces. Like, as someone from the tribal community, we don't even say we went out, we say we got in. And when you do get in places, there's an unspoken quota. You might want too many people get in. And as someone who's been turned away from LGBT spaces, including clubs and bars, because of identifiable travellers, I think that we need to challenge those spaces incredibly quickly and pointedly and loudly. Because I think we seem to be doing ourselves a disservice by doing the whole, let's just be nice. No, sorry. if someone doesn't get in, nobody gets in, because like everybody's a part of an intersectionality, everybody's part of a minority. But I'm absolutely delighted to be here, where people feel comfortable to challenge and name, without wallowing in the potential negative circumstances they're in. But like, I just think we just need to be very wary that the back step is always there. Like, we pushed and pushed and we fought, and the struggle is very real. And but unless we keep pushing, I would have my fears. But I do believe in, especially our rising generation, and people who are championing ahead and are real change makers. But the only way we will sustain this is actually with true alliances, true openness, and true friendships, in authentic ways. Because we may know each other, but it doesn't mean actually we're actually friends. I think by overcoming those barriers, the future is most certainly brighter. So thank you very much again. And I have to say, Charlotte, kind of I'm obviously biased being the Galwegian myself, but I'm delighted that like the Bród continues to hold that space, that warmth, and the rekindling of like a shared campfire, because it most certainly matters.
Yeah. Oh no, 100%. And like, we're only a small little voluntary group at this side of the corner, but we try and do everything we can in our power. So we just want to hear more about how we can do it better and better. So Lilith, final words.
Oh gosh. I guess like if you want to find a little bit more about Tenny, tenny.ie is the place to be. If you want to follow me on the old social media, my @ is basically the Irish for transgender, so Trasanshmach. And kind of final words. God, I don't know. I was trying to think of stuff and I couldn't really come up with it. But I think it's just, I can't say be gay, do crime, can I?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Pride is protest. Be gay, do crime. But no, like, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you all, and thank you so much for everyone who is watching this or listening to this. Our Wednesday is traditionally our kind of mental health day, so there's usually a lot of reflection, a lot of talking. So there's going to be some really great sessions this evening, all about mental health, and I hope you stay tuned for the rest of our Pride Week. So talk to you all soon. Bye.
Thank you all.
Slangafol.